Welcome to the King County Justice Files, where we take you behind the scenes in King County's criminal justice system. I'm Kimberly Hill. It took more than 7 years to build a case against David Peets for the murder of his wife, Nicole. But as Tanya Mosley tells us, our cold case team was able to build a mountain of evidence.
Prosecutor Kristin Richardson's office is filled with reminders of her latest victory.
It was exhausting, but it was worth it.
The boxes of evidence are proof the smallest clues can add up to a compelling case.
It's a matter of getting every single little teeny piece of evidence that you can find and piling it up into a corner until you have enough to get over the hump.
Richardson and her partner, Carla Carlstrom, were able to get over that hump, prosecuting and ultimately winning a case against David Peets, free for nearly 7 years until he was arrested, convicted, and sentenced to 18 years and 4 months in prison for the 2006 murder of his wife, Nicole.
2.5 days deliberation in a case like that, that's a clear indicator that they put on a good case and we had good evidence.
With the circumstantial evidence case, you worry a little bit that a jury is going to expect a kind of smoking gun or an eyewitness, and since you don't have that, you need to make sure that by the end of the trial they feel like they have enough evidence that they truly believe this person did it.
The night of her murder, Carlstrom and Richardson believe Peets and Nicole argued, likely in the couple's bedroom. He got angry, strangled her to death, and got rid of her body, and then pretended to be surprised at her disappearance, even suggesting she'd relapsed from sobriety. But almost immediately after Nicole disappeared, her family was certain David had killed her. Police were also suspicious, but had little to go on.
That we didn't have the advantages of DNA. It was good old-fashioned police work that solved this case.
Detectives began with a phone call made from Nicole's cell phone shortly after she went missing. They meticulously went over David and Nicole's phone records. Detectives soon discovered the call from Nicole's cell phone had pinged off a tower near the Seattle gym where David worked at the time. The call had likely been made by David, making it appear Nicole had called him.
And then at that moment, it's like, I think we just got enough to file our case. It was enough.
There was other compelling evidence, too. Nicole was a petite woman, but the driver's seat of her car was pushed back to accommodate someone tall, likely David, which signified he was the last person to drive it. Also, the day Nicole disappeared, David told detectives she had on a necklace and bracelet. 6 years later, the bracelet turned up. David bought it to a colleague and asked her to appraise it for him. And then there was her retainer.
Our largest piece of evidence was the fact that she was found with her night retainer still in her mouth, because once we were able to convince that jury that she never left that home, the only other person who could have killed her was her husband.
And Peets, they say, was a womanizer and a liar with a bad temper.
Mr. Peets, we knew, had an incredible temper and an incredible quick anger, and there is a lot of evidence we have from women that he'd been involved with after the death of his wife who told us about encounters they'd had where he would suddenly, a switch would flip and he would be furious and angry.
What David really took away was the rest of Nikki's life. And how many years might that have been? 20, 30? We'll never know.
The conviction is a bittersweet victory for Nicole's family. Every year, her mother would call detectives on the anniversary of her daughter's death.
I wanted some justice for Nicole so badly. She deserved it.
Prosecutors Richardson and Carlstrom also felt a nudge from the unlikeliest source, Nicole herself.
But there just was a presence that we had, that we felt her presence all the time.
David, are you sorry that you murdered Nicole?
David Peets was sentenced to 18 years in prison for the murder of his wife, Nicole.
It was just a teenage Halloween party, but it had deadly consequences for a Kent Ridge High School student athlete.
In 2010, 18-year-old Devin Tops had graduated Kent Ridge High School. He'd earned a full-ride athletic scholarship to Eastern Washington University. He was headed there in the spring. But in October, on Halloween night, he went to a party in Kent.
It seemed like a really kind of good kid, normal teenage party, very manageable, cooperative people. And so I think they were having fun.
But there were some party crashers that night, including then 20-year-old Jorge Lizarraga. Prosecutors say Devin was walking a friend to her car when the group started taunting him, and there was a confrontation.
It really was just a scuffle, just kind of a regular, teenage male scuffle.
But Lizarraga had brought a gun.
He shot a couple of rounds in the air, but without really giving much time for that to disperse anything or for people to stop. He then just walked right over, and Devin was sort of in that scuffle with at least one other person, and he put the gun directly against his back and just shot him. And that was it.
Lizarraga was no stranger to police, and neither was the murder weapon. The gun had been stolen from a state trooper just days earlier. Prosecutors say Lizarraga was part of a burglary ring targeting law enforcement.
They thought it was pretty cool that they had done that, and he and his friend took pictures of themselves dressed up in the ICE agent and the DEA hat and posturing and posing with the very weapon that he used to kill Devin.
Lizarraga was convicted of second-degree murder, but at the sentencing, he had little to say.
He had this swagger, which was very chilling to me as he walked into the courtroom, and this was a pretty crowded courtroom. A lot of family and friends of Devin were there, and the swagger that he had just goes to show that he had no remorse for what he did. He wasn't sorry for what he did, and he could care less about anybody else.
Despite that apparent lack of remorse, despite the family's pain and grief, Devin's father had a gift for Jorge Lizarraga.
My name is Nathan Beeler-Bell. I'm the proud father of Devin Tops. For what's been done, I forgive the man who did it. I heard somebody say that Devin was special. You are special too. Whatever you have to go through, I hope you become a stronger man.
When his father got up there and said, "I forgive you," I was amazed. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I expected there to be more, at least anger, not hatred, but anger towards Mr. Lizarraga for taking such, from what everybody describes, a beautiful young man from the world. But I was just shocked that he was able to do that.
So when you're in there, whatever you got to do, you remember that Devin's dad forgives you, so you can go ahead and begin to forgive yourself. And that's the most important, because 2 lives have been lost, not just one.
2 young lives lost after a high school Halloween party.
I don't think anybody that day that went to that party thought it would end in the way it did. I mean, it was senseless. I mean, no one had to die that day. No one should have died that day.
Lizarraga was sentenced to 38 years for the murder of Devin Tops. Many times in domestic violence cases, victims have a difficult time testifying against their abusers. But as Charlie Hinckley tells us, in King County, a victim's advocate can make all the difference.
Emily Elting never has a slow day in the job. As a victim advocate for the King County Prosecutor's Office, she's helping abused women find their way out of domestic violence through the justice system and into new lives. Emily works with as many as 120 victims at a time, each case in a different stage.
Legal information, support, guidance through kind of the confusing system that is the legal system, and then, of course, provide support during the actual trial.
She's tireless. She's a really great advocate. Emily works really hard for the victims, and she cares a lot. And I think especially with Jane, she was hurt really bad.
Jane Gregory is one of Emily's clients. In 2012, she was beaten nearly to death by her partner, Roosevelt Reed.
He had called somebody and said, "I think I killed her. I think I killed the bitch," is what he said. So, I don't know. I don't think he was trying to kill me. I just think that he kind of went overboard, and then snapped back to reality and said, oh, yeah, this is not good.
Reed called 911 and told police that he came home to find Jane beaten and unconscious on the floor. Although she was taken to Harborview Medical Center, at first Jane refused treatment. She had a brain injury, making her confused, and like many domestic violence victims, she depended on her abuser to take care of her. She went home with Reed, who eventually brought her back to Harborview for surgery.
She had severe injuries. The whole right cheekbone, right eye socket was bashed in, and we were able to reconstruct that, but she additionally had soft tissue and nerve injuries, which are permanent.
I don't have any feeling on my face, and my lip is starting to move better with my face now, but at first it was just like I had, like, this eye didn't open for 6 months, and then when it did open, I saw double everything.
While she was healing at home with Reed, Jane refused to talk with investigators. Detective Fred Gendreau, a 20-year police veteran, suspected domestic violence.
I would make the assumption that she's in this house alone with someone that had severely beaten her, and he has a lot of power and control over her, and he's there monitoring what she's saying and what she's doing, so she probably did not feel safe talking with me about what happened.
Detective Gendreau requested help from a victim advocate. It paid off.
It did pay off. It paid off tremendously because a few weeks later I got a phone call from the DV advocate telling me that Jane was in a safe spot now and ready to tell me what really occurred.
You know, at first I was like, well, I still love him, and that's my kid's dad, and, you know, and I still care about him, but I'll never contact him again. I'll never let him, if it's in my control, see his kid or his grandkids that are by me at all, ever. When he pushed me the last time,
With support from Emily Elting, Jane got the help she needed and was able to testify at Reed's trial. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison.
Jane it's just inspirational the way that she was so hurt, she was so injured, and she just showed such bravery when she went up on the stand and testified and basically looked right at him and said what happened. And the trial went really well. A lot of it was because of Jane, though, and the work that Emily put in with her.
For all the victims she serves, Emily stays with them from the first call for help through sentencing and beyond. She may help them find housing, clothing, therapy, or financial aid, and she's there to explain all aspects of the legal system. She gives them a voice when they feel most helpless and afraid. And in Jane's case, she may have helped inspire a new advocate for other victims of domestic violence.
It's been amazing. We stay in touch, and I'm continue to be inspired by what she does in her life. I think she's definitely going to go on to do things to help other victims, and I'm not sure exactly what that'll look like yet, but I feel that she is meant to kind of continue this journey and reach out to other people. So I hope I can be included in that in some way.
The Domestic Abuse Women's Network, or DAWN, provides support and information. You can reach them at 425-656-7867 or visit online at dawnonline.org. They call it the happiest day in the courthouse, the day when dozens of foster kids are legally linked to their forever families. John Yeager has more.
Welcome to the King County Courthouse. All too often, courtrooms like this are the backdrop to the bitterest of human conflicts that need the legal system to find justice, to find resolution.
Attorneys, adoption workers.
Superior Court Judge Dean Lum has seen more than his share of human conflict in the 15 years he's worked in these chambers. But while the courthouse is where this story ends,
What is it, Leah?
it is not what it's about.
Yay, Leah!
It's about families like John and Connie Bergman's.
I'm Connie. This is Leah, Riley,
John.
and Emma.
And how they fill their normal week. John and Connie are proud foster parents. Sure, they have 3 biological children, Crystal, Elliot, and Tyler. See their pictures there on the wall? But these are the children who keep them busy now.
As soon as that child walks in the door, they become part of our family. So whatever we're doing at that particular time, they're included in.
Do you like this bubble I picked out?
I do. Many times kids that come in from care just don't have any structure whatsoever. So we quickly get them into our routine of normal bedtime, 8 o'clock, same time for dinner, those kinds of things. So what was the question? She's got me all distracted.
The Bergmans have been providing foster care for 4 years now.
But yet this is normal.
Connie works downtown. John's self-employed, a stay-at-home dad.
There you go.
The couple's house
Here he is.
isn't really that big. Connie Bergman just wants to give these kids a safe haven. Leah and Emma were born addicted to drugs. Emma had a family member drop her off at daycare and never pick her up. Connie and John are like thousands of foster families across the state, but we need more of them, according to foster care experts.
The children are invisible.
And when we do see foster children, Morse says, we don't like what we see.
There was a study done by Harrison Interactive, and it revealed that across the country, 45% of Americans think that children are in foster care because of something that they did.
Morse says on any given day in this state, some 10,000 children are not living with their biological family. Now, back to the courthouse. Remember, we said this is where the story ends. Today, Judge Lum is in King County's presiding courtroom, the backdrop for National Adoption Day. Judge Lum presides over Adoption Day every year. The staff works hard to make it one big party with games and food for kids and their families. But more importantly, it's when dozens of foster parents legally adopt their foster kids, including the Bergmans, who are making it official with Leah, Riley, and Emma.
So we have 3 kids.
Judge Lum knows you can never tell the difference you can make if you provide foster care and a loving home for a child in need. He still has this old newspaper clipping of when he became a U.S. citizen when he was just 4 years old. His foster parents adopted him from Hong Kong.
I was 9 months old when I was brought here. Of course, I don't remember much about that proceeding, but I remember everybody was really nice.
All right, 1, 2.
It was one of the happiest days of his life, a day like this one, when dozens of kids who just need a safe haven are given something that lasts a lifetime because they're given love.
You want the whole thing?
Before we left, John Bergman told us he'd be a foster parent as long as he and Connie had a house big enough. Don't believe him. John and Connie Bergman have never really had a house big enough, but each of them has a heart with plenty of room. For King County at your service, I'm John Yeager.
It's been closed for more than 2 years, but thanks to some new funding and a lot of community spirit, Maple Valley's police precinct is open for business.
3, 2, 1, go.
The Hicks-Rabourn precinct reopens in Maple Valley.
It is a great day for the community, for the people that live in unincorporated King County. You have a police station to go to once again.
For more than 25 years, the Hicks-Rabourn facility served as Precinct Number 3, or Southeast Precinct, for the King County Sheriff's Department. But it was closed down as a cost-saving measure.
The financial challenges are tough. Money is not plentiful. Very hard choices had to be made by the county council and by us in order to make sure that we had the money to do this and to add 8 officers as well last year. But it's an important choice for public safety.
Some of the new officers will now work here, along with 8 patrol sergeants, 4 detectives, and 51 deputies. Many of the special ops units, like SWAT, the Marine Unit, and the Bomb Unit, will also be headquartered here.
It's a place where people can go. It's a place that makes us feel safer. It's a place that will keep us safer because we're much closer to the people that we serve.
The Hicks-Rabourn facility was named after Sergeant Sam Hicks and Detective Michael Rabourn. Both officers worked here. Both were killed in the line of duty in the 1980s.
When you talk Hicks-Rabourn, some of you may not know him, may not know Mike, you may not know Sam. But this building is more than a building. It's a memorial.
It's also a memorial for Deputy Richard Herzog, who was killed in the line of duty in 2002.
Every patrol officer that goes to his car back here, every sergeant that leaves this precinct to go to their car, to go on patrol, to go to a call, will pass those 3 memorials. And it means they will be reminded of who went before them, who made the ultimate sacrifice.
Thanks for joining us for the King County Justice Files. I'm Kimberly Hill. Visit us online at kingcounty.gov/KCTV.